This video will cover how to make text on a breakaway bar. I recently did this Greg Zumwalt project of the complaint button 2, and I wanted to put text on the side. The base prints as one piece, and I didn't want to have to do multicolor in one print. So I wrote this program that allows you to lay out text and put a breakaway bar on the bottom. The bar keeps the text evenly spaced and allows you to put it on straight. Your objective is to get 2 touch points on every piece of text. You want 2 touch points, that way your text doesn't wobble side to side. Okay, we are going to use Customizer for this demo, and before you start, we enabled Customizer in the design and the view, and make sure the Hide Customizer is not checked. First, we want to click on plus on Optimizer. You're going to name your instance sample 2. Now what's going to happen here is it's going to save all the changes we make under sample 2 if you click save preset and you have sample 2 selected. So now when we start making changes here, it will save them in this profile. So I'm going to click save presets, and if I go back and I select the default profile, you'll see it went back. I can go back and I select my preset sample 2 again, and it went back to where I am. So to save your text string profiles, name them uniquely and click Save Preset when you're done. It will probably warn you that you didn't save it if you forget. And it'll save all these attributes with this line of text. So if you want to go back and modify it or change it in the future, change the font, something like that, you have all the presets already done for that, that phrase that you already typed in. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to change this text to sample. And the first thing you're going to notice is when we change it to sample, all of the connection points broke. And we're going to fix that. Now, the next thing we need to do, you also notice that our line is a lot longer. Now, I know for a fact that this text that I'm building here is going to go in a space that's 117 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and change my bar length to 110. And that's just going to help me make sure that my text is sufficient to fit. And obviously, it's going to be, so let's go here and adjust my font. I'm going to make it a little bigger to 15, not 158. And so my font's a little bigger. Now the next thing we need to do here, you'll see that we have touch points that are way out off the scale. Don't worry about that right now because we're going to be removing those shortly. But right now we're going to adjust the touch point so it's back touching the text. And once we do that, we're then going to lower this bar. So to adjust the touch point, we're going to change the string distance to font, which is right here. It's 1.2 right now. And to me, that looks to be about a 3 maybe, and we'll just go up, tab. So now we're going to go to the bar adjust closer attribute, which is right here set to 0.25. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right now to 1.25, although I think it's going to be in the 2 range. So we're at 2, and let's change, oops, no we're not. Let's change that to 2. And you'll see here we cast up into the text. So at 2.25 is a little big. We're going to change that to 0. And we're about where we need to be. Now, what you need to do is look down your entire line of text because the fonts are all different. You'll find fonts where some letters do cast a little bit lower than other fonts. And you need to accommodate the lowest font, but also extend into the highest one. Now we put a letter P in here, and you can see that P is touching our bar on the bottom, and we can't have that. So we're going to go back again. We're going to adjust our string distance to font, and we're going to adjust that up to 4. And you can see now that I'm just clearing the P, so I need to be a little bit more than 4. It's 4.2 here, so I'm going to change that to 4.5, and there we go. There we go. Now you'll notice that my notch is not here, and that is just an attribute. The program won't do that. We're going to concentrate on keeping the notches on the main line. So this is going to be a little thicker here, and it's a good reason to not make the height of this bar and the connector too terribly tall, because you still want to be able to separate it from the letter. And I'll show you how we do that later. So now that we seem to have our touch points good, everything else seems to be set right. So we're not going to use the second line attribute. Now I'm going to mess everything up, and let's go change our font. So here's the font attribute. The fonts are found in help if you want. And for the sample, we're going to go ahead and change our font to Snap ITC. Now, In OpenSCAD, the font, you can just copy it to the clipboard, and we're going to say OK. And we're going to go paste that font in here. We're going to take the quotes out because we don't want the quotes if you're using Customizer. So you can see now that the font's a little wiggy, right? Now you can also see that my bottom points on the fonts vary a little bit now. So I have two choices here. I can readjust my positioning, or I can adjust my string jump length. Now the string jump length is the distance from the end of this bar into the text. Now the jump length, you have to be careful because that is a bridge if you're printing, right? Because we have a gap here. And your printer is going to ramp up the cooling fan, and it's going to try to form a bridge across this gap without it drooling or dripping into the bottom. We don't necessarily care about a bad bridge because we're going to cut it off, but we do need to be within some reason that a printer won't die. Now you can see that this has a angled text right here, so that's going to be fun. I picked a hard one. So let's go ahead and extend our bridge length to our jump length to 0.75. Okay, so we're now at our jump length's about 0.7. I haven't tested that length yet, but let's see how it works. And you can see we're still too far away, so what we're going to do is go ahead again, and we're going to change our string to font distance, and we're going to go ahead and add a full millimeter to that and see what happens. So that moved everything down a millimeter, and now I need to adjust my bar closer attribute, and we're going to change that to 3 to make it closer by a full millimeter again. And 4 full millimeters too much, so we're going to back that off to 2.5. And there we go. So we're making it into the letters. I'm not worried about the alignment yet because we're going to fix all that. Obviously the P we're going to touch, but we're doing pretty good there. We got 2 touch points on this one, so we're going to keep that attribute and move forward. So now we're ready to go after the offsets on the connectors. Now this is the part you have to do manually. I apologize, but it works, and that's all I can say. Obviously you could do something similar if you're using some CAD software, but in this case we're using OpenSCAD, which is readily available. In this next section, I show you how to change some code over here to do the offsets. I moved that over here into Customizer. So the first line offsets are here and the second line there. So where I change these numbers on the left, you're going to change them on the right in Customizer, and you're just going to type in your new number and press F5 just as you would in the video. Now all this is a loop, and it's saying at 8 millimeters from the edge, put a jump connector in. Now, the reason I didn't purge out all the jump connectors from the sample program is so that you have a point of reference. And the first point of reference I would note is that these two are perfectly hitting the S. And those are 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 3 and 4. So if I go through here and I take these first two out, 8 and 11, and I delete those, I'm going to use the F5 key now to do my refreshes. You'll see that the S stayed there. Now I can also see that the A is short, and it looks to be maybe 10 millimeters. I'm going to change that to 4, and that's way too much, but I got the second one. So I know the second one needs to be 42, and I also need to go through here and back this off and change that to 3, then maybe 7. So there I am. Now I have 2 touch points on the A, and that's what I want. Now you may want to try to balance them out a little more. That's up to you. I find that once I get 2 touch points, I'm pretty happy. So the next touch point is 48. I'm going to back that off a little bit so it's centered. And I'm going to go ahead and delete the next one because it landed in nowhere. And you can see that I've already got the M, so the 59 is good. I'm definitely embedded on the P in the first one. We're going to take out the 66 and see if we can hit the P at a high point. Let me see what my next one is here. So I took that 66 out. Let's go ahead and add 70 back. And I hit the P at a high point. I don't want to use the next one because I'm clearly hitting the L. It's hard to read because it's a weird font, right? I'm going to take out the 79 and move down my line. I almost made the E. I'm going to change this to an 81. And that was an 8. And I'm on the wrong one because it disappeared. And I'm hitting a 5 again. There's my 87. I'm going to back this one off to about probably 90, I guess. right? And there I made my E. So we're done. We hit the last letter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all this stuff out to the bracket at the end. And that's now my array of setting my connections. And there we go. We have 2 connectors per sample letter. And actually, let's make one more change before we do this. So the bar is pretty thin, right? And the bar it's thin enough. This is the size I used in my original one. It can actually flex a bit. So what I did is I went in here and I put in an adjustment for the bar height. The bar thickness. And this is the bar thickness top to bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and change that right up to 3. Now, obviously, it's just going to use more material because we're throwing away the bar material. But what that's going to do is it's going to keep my letters from flexing as much, right? Because that bar is now thicker. Now, other attributes you can touch are the height, and I wouldn't touch the height unless you're going to change the extrusion height on the font. So right now, my font is, my font extrusion, I believe, is set to 0.8. Font extrusion, it's set to 1. So originally I was using a layer thickness of 0.2. I'm probably going to print this at 0.1 because obviously I'm going to get more layers in. So you do want to make sure that all of your other attributes about the bar heights are less than your font. Obviously, you can print as small as you think you can get away with, and you can change the bar heights and connector heights to go with that. So now that we've done this, we're going to press F6 and let that render. It's going to disappear for a second while it does that. So to export it, you just click the STL button and save it out. When I designed this, I contemplated, do I put the font facing upward or downward? I decided on having it face upward. Some people, you may have a rough surface on your plate. I'm using a smooth one, but sometimes, those can also have imperfections where you have to scrape it off. So the font is right up. Now, I'm using Prusa Slicer, and Prusa has an option here in Infill called ironing, and I haven't used it yet on the font, so let's turn it on. But on the top surface, it will try to iron it and make it very smooth. I'm going to use the default settings here. I'm using 0.1 millimeter layer height, so I don't know how well it's going to work. I've used it in other layer heights, and we're going to go ahead and slice that at that and see what it does. And actually, you can see right there in the preview that it's representing the ironing very well. So let's go back and compare that. So we're going to go back to printer settings again. Let's turn off ironing. We'll go back and render that again. And you can see here that you're going to see the fill lines. So we're going to go ahead and print this with ironing and see what we come up with. One thing I also don't do in this code is I don't attach things like the tops of eyes or exclamations. So right now you'll have to keep track of those and glue them on separately. So if I change that L to an I, you'll see that the dot of the eye is free floating up there. So when you take it off your plate, you're going to have to keep track of that and then glue it in afterwards. So a note about the bar length. So the bar length here is 110. So let's go ahead and change that to 130, which is 20 longer. Now when we do that, you'll see that all of our bars, our connection strings that we set are now offset and not working. We extended that by 20, so I added this attribute here called offset adjustment. And what that does is it moves the first position by the delta, 50% of the delta of the change. So we added 20. I'm going to change that to 10. And what that does is it readjusts the starting position back. So once you get it off your plate, you should be able to get started here. Now the first thing you want to do is you want to probably align it where you want to place it. And I use some painter's tape and mark it. I already put my rubber gloves on, so I had to use tweezers to place it in there. But I put some markers underneath so you have level, and then maybe one at the end to indicate where you want it to start if you're trying to center it or something. So once that's done, we're going to go ahead and apply the glue. So the first thing, make sure you flip your text over so you're doing the back. Right there, I'm actually using a ruler to make sure I set them right so it's level. You want to go ahead and make sure you flip it over so your text is facing down and you're actually putting the glue on the back. I am using a piece of Q-tip cut in half at an angle. I like to use gel glue because it tends not to run as much, and it also tends not to wick through the layers of the print as much. So I'm going to go ahead and take the gel super glue, and I'm going to put it on the Q-tip, and then I'm going to just spread it on the back of the letters. You don't have to get it on the edges, and you don't want to be too close to the edges, because when the glue dries, it has a white appearance, so you'd have a white outline. Because it's gel, I get to put it on a little bit thick, so it's going to flatten out some. Now, keep in mind, you only have a limited period of time. You only have a limited period of time to do this. If you're doing a really long phrase, just cut the bar on the bottom and do part of your text first and part of the text second, but make sure that your guidelines that you put at the top account for the fact that you have to do a left and the right, and you need them to come out right. So once I have the glue on all the letters, I'm just going to flip it over and kind of line it up. And try not to slide it around too much, because again, that glue would be visible. And then I'm just going to press it down and let it sit to dry. So after it's done drying, you're going to take those the guide tapes off. If you're printing a second line, don't forget to take the guides off for the first line. I made that mistake myself. You go to put the second line on, and you drop it down and discover that your second line hit the tape from the first line. So make sure you peel those off. I'm actually doing this, the glue is still a little wet, so you'll see me putting my finger on the letter to keep it from off. Now I have this nice curved X-Acto knife, and what this I'm basically doing is holding it right up next to the letter and just rocking it back and forth, and I can hear a snap. Now as you're going along and you think something hasn't separated, you can take the line and just push it off to the side a little bit, and it'll show you where you've successfully done the detaches starting from the side you're on. So as I struggle there with that one, it's possible to already cut all the way through. And in a second here, you'll see me push out the line on the bottom right there, which tells me it's still latched a little bit. I'll go back and touch it, and I can see it break off. Now there's that P, and remember that was a little bit thicker, but it cut through pretty easily. Now, if you have a really thin surface that you're gluing this to, you want to be careful. But obviously, this accomplishes the task, and some snap off right away, and others just take a little bit more work. I will say that this blade was a little bit dull. So once you get to the last one, your strip will break off, and you'll be able to see immediately your results. And you'll have that nice clean text sitting there, evenly distributed as it would be as you printed it. Well, it's young code, but I wanted to share it with you, so if you had some text you wanted to print, you can do that. Obviously, if you find a bug or something, let me know, and we'll see what we can do. Hope everything works out for you, and thank you for watching the video.